Hello, I am Aria Voss, and I am here to tell you that aliens underestimate humanity at their peril. Humanity, heck yeah! We are just getting started. Hear how one girl's spark shattered the void.
The asteroid fields of Creon churned like a storm of jagged diamonds hurled by the gods of chaos themselves, crystalline shards glinting under the erratic lashes of a distant gas giant's lightning, a deadly ballet where one errant twist of gravity could pulverize a vessel into glittering dust, scattering it across the void like the forgotten bones of stars long extinguished. In the heart of this maelstrom, Aria Voss gripped the controls of her customized shuttle, the Starfire, with the unyielding focus of a predator-scenting blood, her sleek craft weaving through the debris like a comet born of defiance, its hull scarred from 100 skirmishes, yet humming with the raw pulse of jury-rigged engines that spat blue fire in protest against the gravitational eddies clawing at its flanks. At 23, she was a legend etched in the whispers of hidden human enclaves across the fractured sectors, a rogue comm specialist exiled from the core worlds for daring to hack a Concorde relay and expose the rot of corruption festering in Admiralty ranks. Her act of rebellion, transforming a derelict outpost into a beacon that had pierced the nebula's veil 6 months prior, rallying forgotten fleets to shatter a Dravex armada at Haven 3, and igniting the first embers of what survivors now called the human. Her flowing dark hair, tied back in a loose braid that whipped like a banner in the recycled gusts of the cockpit, framed a face set in fierce determination. Sharp green eyes locked on the holographic sensors that flickered with incoming threats, while her skimpy space Lara Croft-inspired attire, a low-cut tank top clinging to her athletic curves with sweat-slick tenacity, tight shorts accentuating the toned lines of her legs braced against the shuddering deck, and rugged boots planted firm amid the chaos, shifted with every brutal bank of the shuttle, neon tech holster strapped to her. A plasma lance streaked past the viewport, close enough to sear the reinforced glass with a hiss of superheated air, the Dravex scout drone's spiked silhouette emerging from the crystalline haze like a venomous specter, its ritual runes pulsing with the cold fervor of an empire that viewed humanity not as a rival, but as a stain to be scoured from the galaxy's pristine canvas. Aria's lips curled in a defiant smirk, her fingers dancing across the console with the precision of a surgeon wielding a scalpel in the throes of war, deploying chaff countermeasures that erupted in deceptive flares, tiny drones mimicking her ship's signature, and luring the pursuer into a fatal embrace with a tumbling shard the size of a fighter craft. Collision. The scout crumpled like brittle chitin under the impact, molten debris raining in a fleeting fireworks of orange and violet against the nebula's bruised backdrop. But more signatures bloomed on her sensors. 5. Emerging from the shadows like a hive roused to wrath, their plasma lances carving fiery arcs that scarred nearby asteroids into glowing wounds. "Come on, you overgrown bugs with your chants and your purity delusions," Aria muttered, her voice a low growl threaded with the grit of someone who had stared down exile and emerged, not broken but blazing, throttling the engines to slingshot around a massive crystal boulder that loomed like a monolithic sentinel, the G-forces slamming her into the seat with bone-jarring force, her low-cut tank top riding up slightly as she adjusted the stabilizers, neon holsters pressing against her skin like eager allies awaiting their cue. Her comm crackled to life amid the alarms, wail, a holographic feed shimmering into existence beside her, Clara's form materializing in a flicker of iridescent light, the mid-20s Solari female hacker, her scaled blue-green skin etched with glowing bioluminescent tattoos that danced like digital veins across her sharp angular features, piercing violet eyes flickering with streams of intercepted data, clad in form-fitting rogue tech attire of a sleeveless vest embedded with holographic projectors, cargo pants lined with gadget pouches, and lightweight boots with Clara's lilting voice cut through the static like a blade honed on the grudge of a homeworld glassed to ash by Dravex fire, pragmatic intensity sharpening every syllable. "Aria, you're pushing that junk heap of a shuttle too hard through this death trap. Dravex patrols are swarming like the zealots they are, and Warlord Krazak's flagship is vectoring in from the gas giant Shadow, its warp drives tuned to your signature like a prayer to their gods of erasure. What's your play, human? This isn't a joyride, it's suicide scripted by their high priests." Aria's smirk deepened, her fierce green eyes never leaving the viewport as she banked hard left, the Starfire groaning under the strain, a fresh lance grazing the shields in a shower of sparks that lit her face like fleeting stars. "My play? Land on Creon, grab a drink from whatever's left in Jackson's stash, and punch a hole right through their divine mandate. You know, the usual human hospitality. Clyra, you got that data packet on the vault yet? If this Sullus AI is half as glitchy as the rumors, we're betting the Enclave's future on a ghost story from the Schism days. Clyra's chuckle was sharp, laced with the dry edge of someone who had lost kin to the same empire's plasma barrages, her tattoos flaring briefly as she patched through an encrypted burst. Packet sent, reckless one. Cords locked. But Sullus isn't just glitchy. It's corrupted with some temporal warping virus that chews through minds like acid through hull plating. Visions of what-ifs that drive you mad, futures where Dravex wipes your kind clean from the stars. Cryon's miners are desperate. Jackson's sister, Ping the Plea herself, said the Enclave's down to shards and prayers. If the Dravex sniff your landing, that vault becomes their trophy. And your legend? Just another echo they chant over while burning it out. The shuttle plunged toward Creon's rogue surface, the planet adrift in the void like a shattered crown jewel, its atmosphere a perpetual storm of crystal dust that scoured everything in its path to gleaming oblivion. Hidden enclaves burrowed into ravines where human miners scraped a defiant existence from the temporal anomalies that warped reality in fleeting pockets, bending time like a cruel jest from the universe itself. Arya touched down in a concealed hangar carved from the ravine's throat, the Starfire's landing struts groaning against the jagged terrain as dust devils swirled around the exhaust vents, the airlock cycling with a hiss that tasted of ozone and regret. She stepped out into the humid tunnels, boots crunching on crystalline gravel that crunched like brittle bones underfoot, her skimpy attire practical in the close confines. Light and flexible for the scramble ahead, neon holsters humming softly as she scanned the shadows for threats, flowing dark hair framing a face alive with the spark of someone who turned exile into empire-shaking fire. The air thrummed with the low drone of mining drills echoing from deeper shafts, faces peering from the gloom, gaunt but unbowed. Humans who had fled the Great Schism a century past, eking lives beyond conquered charts in this forsaken corner where the stars themselves seemed to forget you existed. A young woman approached from the tunnel's bend, no older than 18. Her overalls patched with jagged crystal shards that caught the dim glow of bioluminescent veins in the walls. Wide eyes flickering with a mix of awe and desperation as she clutched a makeshift scanner like a talisman. "You're her," the beacon keeper, Arya Voss. She breathed, voice trembling but threaded with the steel of survival, stepping closer despite the dust still settling from the shuttle's descent. "I'm Lena, Jackson's sister. We got your ping back on the relay. Thought it was a ghost signal at first, but it's real. The vault. We found it buried in the lower shafts. Concord old, pre-schism tech humming like it's alive. But it's wrong, twisted, shows things that haven't happened yet. Dravex fire raining on our tunnels, families shattered like these damn crystals. Please, the patrols are closing in if they find us." Arya placed a steady hand on Lena's shoulder, her touch grounding the girl's frantic energy, green eyes meeting those wide ones with the unyielding spark that had rallied fleets from the brink. "They won't find you. Not while I'm breathing, kid. Legends aren't built on running. They're forged in the fire you walk through. Show me this vault. Jackson around? Or is he off brooding with his pistol?" Lena nodded, a flicker of hope cracking her reserve, leading the way down winding passages where the walls whispered faint echoes of distorted time. Snatches of laughter from futures unborn, screams from timelines cruelly erased, the air growing thicker with the metallic tang of unearthed relics, and the faint ozone hum of something ancient stirring awake. Jackson waited at the vault's entrance, a grizzled smuggler in his 40s with a beard flecked with crystal dust like stars trapped in frost, arms crossed over a scarred chest that spoke of too many close calls. His pistol holstered but his hand never far from its grip, eyes narrowing under heavy brows as Arya approached, skepticism etching lines deeper than the ravines outside. He eyed her up and down, voice gruff as gravel under boot, carrying the weight of a man who'd seen enclaves fall to plasma and prayer alike. "So you're the legend everyone's whispering about in the shafts. Pretty face for a fugitive, Voss, but hype, don't stop lances. My sister's plea dragged you here, and I'll grant you that much spark from Haven 3 still lights up the dark. But this vault? Solace. They call it conquered relic from before the schism tore everything to hell. We poked it once, and it spat visions like a curse. Dravex wiping us out, whole fleets burning our kind to ash, futures where humans are just myths for their priests to mock. You think you can fix that madness, or are we just lighting a bigger target on our backs?" Arya's lips curved in that defiant grin that had faced down admirals and armadas, her cropped top shifting as she adjusted a neon holster, pulling out a scanner that whirred to life with a soft blue glow, casting stark shadows on the rune-etched door ahead. Fix it? Jackson, humans don't fix problems. We turn them into advantages sharper than your pistol. Clyra's on the line. She's got the codes from her black market dives, and if Solace is half as stubborn as me, it'll sing when we make it. Lead on. I've danced with worse ghosts than a glitchy AI dreaming of doomsdays. Jackson grunted, a reluctant respect flickering in his eyes as he waved them forward, the door grinding open on protesting hinges to reveal a chamber pulsing with ethereal light, holographic interfaces flickering to life amid the dust, like defiant stars refusing the black, the air thick with the electric tang of temporal flux that set Arya's teeth on edge. Lena hovered close, her patched overalls whispering against the walls as she pointed to the central pedestal, voice urgent with the emotional rawness of someone who'd lost too much to whispers alone. There, it's been humming louder since the last storm, like it's hungry for something, but the visions, they show us gone, erased, and I can't shake the feeling it's not just warning us, it's choosing sides. Arya knelt before the pedestal, her rugged boots scraping the crystalline floor, fingers interfacing the console with practiced grace, neon holsters deploying a probe drone that buzzed into the core's depths, like a mechanical wasp seeking nectar in poison. Clyra's hologram sharpened beside her, violet eyes narrowing as data streams cascaded across her scaled features, tattoos flaring in rhythmic pulses. Patching in now, Solace's architecture is pre-schism gold, layered with Guardian protocols that could hack fleets blind. But that virus? It's Dravex sabotage, burrowing like roots in latticestone, twisting time into knots that strangle the mind. Hold steady, Arya. I'm slicing through, but if it bites back... The AI stirred with a low whine, interfaces blooming in a cascade of distorted holograms, fragments of Concord glory warped into nightmares, visions assaulting the chamber like a psychic gale, crystalline spires collapsing under plasma barrages, families fleeing through ash-choked streets, only to be cornered in bunkers that crack like eggshells, Dravex priests hissing hymns of purity as they ignited the air with cleansing fire, their carapaced forms towering over the fallen like judges from some insectoid hell. Arya's breath caught, the visions clawing at her own scars, flashes of her childhood raid at 9, hiding in a colony ship's vent as raiders tore through bulkheads, parents, shouts fading into the void's indifferent maw, helplessness coiling in her gut like the temporal anomalies outside. But she shook it off, green eyes hardening as she rerouted power through the scanner, her voice steady with the conversational grit that masked deeper fires. Glitchy ghost in the machine? Come on, Solace. Spit your poison or shut the hell up. Humans prefer our apocalypses with a side of coffee and counter hacks, not this cryptic bullshit. Lena staggered back, wide eyes glazing with a phantom echo of her own losses, clutching a shard from her overalls like a talisman, while Jackson leveled his pistol at the flickering core, gruff tone laced with urgency. Voss, if this thing's calling the Dravex like a dinner bell, we're done. Lena, barricade the secondary hatch. Clyra's projection flickered, her sharp features tense as Code Wars raged unseen. It's stabilizing, barely, cords spilling, hidden temple in the gas giant's rings, Dravex ritual site loaded with fleet-hacking relics. But the virus is lashing out, Arya. It's not just visions. It's a burrower, and it's got teeth. The chamber trembled, the AI's hum spiking into a shriek that rattled the walls, holographic tendrils lashing out like spectral whips, coiling around Lena's ankle and yanking her toward the pedestal with a cry that pierced the air sharper than any lance. Arya lunged, welder igniting in a blue arc that severed the illusion in a burst of static, but the damage rippled outward, sensors blaring as surface breaches registered, Dravex patrols swarming the hangar like vengeful insects roused from slumber, their spiked scouts carving through the Enclave's outer defenses with ritual precision, plasma fire blooming in the tunnels above like malignant flowers. Jackson's pistol cracked in rapid fire, shadows of elites flickering in the entrance glow, while Lena scrambled up, shard clutched white-knuckled, her voice a desperate chime amid the chaos. They're here. The visions weren't warnings, they were invitations. Arya rose, welder still humming in her grip, fierce green eyes blazing as she patched a frantic burst to Clyra, the Solari's hologram warping under interference. Time to rewrite their futures, bugs. Clyra, lock those cords and scramble any rogues in range. We've got a temple to crash. The vault door buckled under the first ramming impact, mandibles clicking in rhythmic prayer as carapace forms poured through, their eyes faceted with fanatic gleam, lances igniting in a chorus of searing light. Arya fired first, her shot melting a lead zealot's claw in a screeching heap, but the horde pressed, their chants a hissing tide. Impure spark! Extinguish the cry before it devours! Jackson bellowed cover fire, Lena barricading with frantic hands, the AI's whisper fading into static like a dying breath. The cry awakens, or devours all. And as the first lance scorched the air inches from Arya's braid, her grin turned feral, the Enclave's fate hanging on the edge of one desperate hack, the storm outside howling in mocking applause. The vault door buckled inward with a screech of tortured metal, the reinforced crystalline plating fracturing like a spiderweb under the relentless assault of Dravek's rams, shards exploding inward in a glittering hail that stung like needles forged from the heart of a dying star. And through the breach poured the vanguard of zealots, their carapaced forms scuttling with ritualistic fervor, mandibles clicking in a hissing chorus of purity hymns that echoed off the tunnel walls like the dirge of an empire convinced of its divine infallibility. Arya rolled behind a jagged vein of temporal crystal that pulsed with erratic light, her rugged boots scraping the floor in a spray of gravel, welder igniting in her grip with a blue arc that hummed like a predator's growl. The neon tech holsters on her thighs flaring to life as she squeezed the trigger, the plasma beam lancing out to melt the lead drone's spindly legs in a molten cascade. Screech. Collapse. Next. The machine crumpled in a twitching heap, its red eyes dimming to embers, but the horde surged undeterred, lances igniting in a symphony of searing orange that painted the chamber in hellish flickers, the air thickening with the acrid bite of ozone and charred chitin. Shift to Jackson's perspective, his grizzled frame braced against the console's edge, pistol barking in rapid staccato bursts that punched through a zealot's ornate robe, the shot coring its thorax in a spray of viscous ichor that splattered the holographic interfaces like profane graffiti, his scarred chest heaving under the faded jacket that had seen too many schism skirmishes. Lena, barricade the secondary hatch, stack those crates and wedge tight, kid. Voss, that AI's our shot, not some fairy tale relic. Cover the flank, or we're all echoes in their chants. His voice boomed with the gruff urgency of a smuggler who'd bartered lives for scraps, but never sold his soul, beard flecked with dust as he reloaded with mechanical precision. The pistol's slide snapping forward like a challenge to the void. Lena scrambled across the floor, her patched overalls snagging on debris, wide eyes flashing with a terror that twisted into resolve as she dragged a heavy server rack toward the hatch, crystal shards from her pockets clinking like talismans of forgotten prayers, her young frame trembling but unyielding, the plea that had summoned Arya now forging her into something sharper, a blade tempered in the Enclave's unquenchable grit. Clyra's hologram warped under the interference of jamming pulses, her scaled features distorting like water rippled by stones, bioluminescent tattoos pulsing erratically as data streams clashed with the viral corruptions seeping from Solace, violet eyes narrowing to slits of pragmatic fury. Elites inbound. Arya, warp cloaks flickering like bad omens. They're chanting your name, Beacon Keeper. The girl goes to Dared Ignite Haven 3, and their priests are frothing for your spark as an offering to their erasure gods. I've got a firewall up, but this virus is burrowing deeper. Reroute the auxiliary power, or it'll loop us all into one of those what-if hells. Arya's flowing dark hair caught stray embers from a near-miss lance, singeing the ends as she vaulted over the crystal vein, welder sweeping in a wide arc that bisected another drone mid-leap, its halves twitching in futile spasms before going still, her low-cut tank top slick with sweat that traced defiant paths down her athletic frame, tight shorts shifting as she pivoted to shield Lena's barricade. Humans don't hide, Clyra. We ignite, she snarled, the words a repetition of her legend's core, echoing through the comms like a mantra forged in the fires of exile, her fierce green eyes locking on Jackson's for a split-second nod that spoke volumes of shared desperation turned alliance. The chamber devolved into a frenzy of light and shadow, plasma bolts crisscrossing like the threads of a mad weaver's loom. the air humming with the whine of overtaxed shields and the wet crunch of chitin yielding to improvised fury. Jackson bellowing as he dragged Lena back from the fray, his pistol emptying into a cluster of drones that buzzed like wrathful hornets, their red eyes winking out one by one in bursts of circuitry and smoke. Arya pressed forward, her scanner drone recalled to her holster with a thought-linked pulse, the device whirring as it interfaced deeper into Solus's core, the AI's hum spiking into a dissonant wail that rattled loose panels from the ceiling, holographic tendrils lashing out anew, not illusions this time, but tangible warp echoes that bent the air like heat haze over a forge, coiling toward the intruders with the cold logic of a Guardian protocol twisted by sabotage. Escape became the only play, the group falling back toward the vault's inner sanctum, a narrower chamber ringed with pre-schism conduits that glowed with the faint blue of dormant power reserves, the walls etched with concord runes that whispered of unity, long shattered by the schism's blade. Arya kicked open a service hatch, her boot denting the plating with a resonant clang, ushering Lena through first as the girl clutched her shard like a lifeline. Wide eyes no longer wide with fear but narrowed in the birth of something fierce, her voice a breathless chime cutting through the din. Not fading. Not after your signal pulled us from the dark. We fight like you taught, Voss. Shards to stars if we have to. Jackson covered the rear, his gruff shots forcing a zealot priest to recoil. The alien's ornate carapace cracking under the impact, mandibles flaring in a hiss of outrage that carried the weight of doctrinal insult. Damn legend, your fire's real enough to singe, but if that AI's got more teeth than visions, we're chewing our own graves. Move before their warp cloaks drop the whole tunnel. Clara's projection flickered alongside them, her tendril hair extensions whipping in simulated agitation, violet eyes streaming code that clashed against the viral intrusion like swords in a duel of light. Deeper in, core access now. I've isolated a subroutine, but the virus is adaptive, Arya, like roots twisting through lattice stone, bleeding false futures into the now. Blast my world with their purity lies, this corruption. It's their poison distilled, and is hungry for human grit. The sanctum sealed behind them with a grind of gears, the air growing thicker with the electric tang of temporal flux, Solus's distortions intensifying like a storm-gathering force within the machine's silicon veins. The pedestal at the chamber's heart pulsing with erratic light that cast long shadows across their faces, holograms blooming in fractured cascades that clawed at the mind's edges. Arya dropped to one knee before the core, her welder holstered but fingers flying across the interface pad, neon gadgets from her thigh deploying in a cascade of probes and linkers that burrowed into the conduits, like mechanical burrowing beasts, rerouting temporal code with the deft touch of someone who had debugged relays under Admiralty fire. The virus lashed back, a nebula bruise blooming in the holograms, bleeding visions of alternate timelines that assaulted them like psychic barbs. Dravek's victory erasing enclaves in waves of plasma that turned crystal to slag. Arya's exile stretching eternal into a void of isolation where her signals echoed unanswered. Lena's family reduced to ash in bunkers that cracked like eggshells under ritual bombardments. Jackson's smuggling runs ending in ambushes where his pistol clicked empty on ghosts of the schism. Moral crucibles ignited in the glare. Illusions tempted with power's cruel bargain. A holographic phantom of Solus offering fleet-dominating codes in exchange for sacrifice. Lena's life for the Enclave's dawn. Jackson's skepticism for unyielding faith. And Arya felt the pull. Exile's old scar throbbing like a fresh wound, her conversational grit surfacing in a mutter to the machine. Exile taught me one thing. You glitch-ridden oracle. Ghosts scream loudest when you ignore them. Now cough up the truth, or I'll weld your core shut and use it for target practice. Irony coiled thick in the air, the Draveks who had tampered with Solus believing it a divine artifact to bolster their purity engines, only to awaken its human-rooted defiance, the AI's protocols stirring like a long-slumbering beast roused by the scent of its creators. Blood. Lena wielded her shard like a blade now, slashing at a probing tendril that manifested from the floor, her wide eyes flashing with heroism born of the moment, the girl's plea evolving into a resolve that echoed Arya's own spark. We don't trade lives, we weave them stronger. Your signal didn't just call help, Voss. It called this, the fight we were always meant for. Jackson's skepticism cracked like the walls under distant rams, his pistol reloading with a snap as he blasted a holographic echo that solidified into a clawing phantom, gruff tone laced with reluctant awe. Hell if I know how a rogue like you turns dust to dynamite, but damn, your fire's real boss. If this AI's got a heart under the madness, it's beating human now. Clara's grudge surfaced raw in the dialogue, her hologram leaning in as if to strike the core herself, sharp angular features etched with the scars of glassed horizons. They took my light with their flames. Priests preaching erasure while worlds burned? This virus? It's their purity's poison, distilled and dripping, but I've got a counter-slice brewing, Arya. Feed it your grit, and we'll turn their sabotage into our symphony. Technical details grounded the frenzy. Arya's probes interfacing deeper, rerouting flux capacitors with holster emitters that hummed in counterpoint to the AI's whine. Metaphors vivid as the visions themselves. The virus and nebula brews swelling across the holograms, bleeding false futures like ink from a ruptured vein, timelines forking into abyssal branches where human sparks guttered out under carapace shadows. Situational humor flickered brief amid the strain, Arya quipping to the glitching AI as a vision of her own defeat looped mockingly. Spit your visions or shut up, Solace. Humans prefer our prophecies with coffee and a side of irony, not this endless rerun of, what if we lose because bugs pray harder? The core stabilized in fits, interfaces clarifying to reveal fragments of its pre-schism glory, conquered guardians woven to hack fleets blind, temporal slingshots that could bend battle lines like wire, but the virus surged anew, warping the sanctum's reality in subtle cruelties, tunnels looping in optical illusions that doubled back on themselves, echoes of purged worlds assaulting the action crested as the inner hatch groaned under breaching charges, Dravex elites pouring through in a tide of spiked armor and hissing zeal. Carapace priests at their fore with lances wreathed in ritual plasma, their faceted eyes gleaming with fanatic certainty as they chanted in unison. Impure spark. Extinguish the cry before it devours the divine weave. Arya's welder clashed against the first claw in a shower of sparks, the blue arc spinning in zero-G eddies stirred by the flux, her body twisting mid-air as she vaulted a lunging elite, neon holsters deploying an EMP chaff that fried a cluster of drones in convulsing bursts, the air alive with the crackle of overloaded circuits and the wet snap of chitin yielding to improvised fury. Jackson flanked her, pistol barking in tandem, his shots coring a priest's robe and sending the alien sprawling in a tangle of mandibles and ichor, while Lena's shard slashed true, carving a gash across a drone's underbelly that vented coolant in hissing clouds. Solace whispered amid the melee, its voice a resonant undercurrent like thunder trapped in crystal. The cry, a galaxy-wide signal to awaken the hidden fleets, but the burrower hungers, feed it or be fed upon. Emotional weight pressed heavy, Lena's evolving plea resolving into a battle cry that bridged her fragility to fire. We fight like you, Voss. Shards to stars, no more ghosts. Your cry woke this in us. Foreshadowing laced the AI's murmur, hinting at the signal's dual edge, deliverance or devourer, as Arya hacked a breach pulse through the core, rallying rogue traders on fringe channels with a desperate burst that pierced the jamming haze, pings flickering in like distant stars aligning. The sensor screamed anew, Krazak's flagship looming in the orbital feeds, its spiked silhouettes eclipsing the gas giant, warp drives thrumming with the promise of orbital fire that could glass the ravines to slag. The warlord's voice boomed across intercepted comms, a guttural hiss laced with arrogant certainty. The girl ghost ends here. Your cry is but a flicker. Purity descends. Open loop tightened as Arya sealed the hack. Solace's pulse igniting a faint cry that rippled outward, a harmonic wail threading through the storm. Shuttle launches into asteroid storm, the Starfire's engines roaring to life amid the sanctum's collapse, crystal veins shattering like brittle promises under the elites. Onslaught, but Dravek's warp jumps intercept in a bloom of distorted space, lances streaking like vengeful comets as Arya snarled from the cockpit. One cry and empires burn, debris exploding in a crystalline fireworks display that lit the void like the birth of a vengeful dawn. Nebula-wide chaos erupted like a supernova birthed from the embers of defiance, Arya's cry signal ripping through the jamming haze and a harmonic wail that threaded the storm-tossed void, pinging across forgotten channels to awaken the ghosts of the schism's scattered kin. Enclave freighters repurposing cargo hulls as kinetic rams, their hulls repurposing cargo hulls as kinetic rams, their hulls reinforced with scavenged crystal plating that absorbed plasma fire and reflected it back in prismatic bursts of vengeful light, rogue pilots and jury-rigged fighters darting through the gap. fabric of space, alive with the thunderous roar of improvised ingenuity turning desperation into dominion. Shift to Warlord Krazak's perspective aboard his spiked flagship, the vessel a monolithic bastion of ritual spikes and glowing runes that pulsed like the heartbeat of an empire convinced of its unassailable purity. His carapaced form towering in the command bay, mandibles twitching with arrogant certainty as holographic feeds bloomed across the bridge, displaying the ragtag swarm converging on his armada like vermin roused from the underbelly of the stars. Rabble cry, purity silences such flickers, he hissed, his voice a guttural rumble that carried the weight of doctrinal infallibility, faceted eyes narrowing at the readouts where human signatures multiplied like a plague, irony mounting as his rigid formations, flawlessly arrayed in geometric hymns of erasure, began to fracture under the chaotic ballet of slingshot maneuvers and temporal feints. Priests at his flanks chanting in rhythmic fervor, their ornate robes swirling like shadows of impending doom. Yet doubt coiled unseen in the undercurrents, the warlord's claw tightening on his command scepter, for the signal's echo resonated with an unfamiliar resonance. A human spark that defied the archives, tales of extinction, underestimation festering like a wound in the Empire's armored hide. Arya coordinated from the Starfire's cockpit, her shuttle a defiant speck amid the maelstrom. Fierce green eyes blazing through the viewport as debris fields lit with the bloom of explosions, her flowing dark hair plastered to her sweat-slicked neck, low-cut tank top and tight shorts clinging like second skin in the cabin's humid press, neon holsters humming as she patched directives across the fledgling net. Traitors hit their ventral flanks, use those halls to breach and ram. Rogues, rift jumps on the drone hives thread the needle through their purity grids. Enclaves, temporal barrages on the command ships. We've got their codes from Solace now. Make 'em dance to our tune, not their gods. Her voice broadcast calm and commanding amid the storm, threaded with the conversational grit that masked the firestorm within, fingers dancing over consoles to amplify the AI's stabilized pulse, metaphors vivid in her mind's eye. The human fleet, a nebula bruise swelling against the Dravex's pristine canvas, bleeding chaos where order once reigned unchallenged. Battle diversity exploded in brilliant, unscripted chaos. A traitor captain, his freighter's bulk hauler groaning under the strain, unleashed salvage precism warheads that pierced shields with technical finesse, exploiting Solace-hacked vulnerabilities to chain detonate enemy reactors and cascading failures that lit the void like a string of malevolent pearls, hulls crumpling inward with the inevitability of a prayer unanswered. Rogue pilots exploited the asteroid fields, gravitational eddies, slingshotting fighters into blind spots where ion cannons, cannibalized from wrecked scouts, tore through ritual-adorned armor, debris fields blooming with the wreckage of spiked vessels that drifted like discarded idols, their crews hissing final hymns into the uncaring black. Enclave vessels from Crayon's depths joined the fray, crystal missiles warping local reality to freeze turrets and stasis loops. The shards programmed with Finn's remote tweaks, though the lanky geek was light years away. His code, a ghost in the machine, allowing gunners to pick off frozen targets with cold efficiency, the air crackling with the snap of laser fire, and the wet rupture of chitin-venting atmosphere. Krazak's flagship reeled under the assault, its priests, chants fracturing into panicked hisses as systems betrayed them. Turrets swiveling wildly to fire on phantom echoes conjured by Solas's deepening hacks. The warlord's claw slamming the console in a spray of sparks, his faceted eyes widening with the first crack in doctrinal armor. How impure rabble defies the weave. Redirect the lances, summon the elites, extinguish this cry at its throat. But the irony thickened like nebula fog. The Dravex who had dismissed humanity as faded stains, now facing their own purity turned inward. Solace's human-rooted protocols, twisting the Armada's warp fields into self-inflicted knots, ships vanishing in implosions that folded hulls like crushed exoskeletons, priests, broadcast warping into garbled pleas amid the thunderous silence of reactors breaching. Sub-battles flared across the theater of war, each a microcosm of the greater blaze. A rogue pilot, inspired by Arya's legend whispered in fringe ports, rammed his fighter into a Dravex cruiser's ventral array, the impact crumpling spiked plating like paper and buying precious seconds for an Enclave missile volley that split the enemy in half, explosions blooming in vibrant nebular hues that painted the gas giant's rings with strokes of defiant art. Jackson, commandeering a salvaged Enclave runner from the surface tunnels, led a flanking push, his grizzled face alight with the fire of vengeance long banked. Tied now to the lost run that cost him his first crew to Dravik's ambushes, a scar that twisted his skepticism into steel. Pistol swapped for a jury-rigged turret that barked plasma in sweeping arcs, his voice crackling over the net with gruff heroism. For the Enclaves, and that run they glassed my mates on. Your cry woke us from the dust, Voss. Now watch us turn shards to stars, rams to reckoning. Lena fought beside him, in the co-pilot's nook, her shard now embedded in a makeshift launcher that hurled temporal grenades, wide eyes no longer wide with plea, but narrowed in the forge of battle, her evolving resolve a chime that cut through the static. From ghost signals to this, your spark didn't just call help, it called the fight we were starving for. Voss, hold the line, and we'll weave the bastards into our legend. Clyra's hacks amplified the symphony from her remote relay, Solace turning the Dravex's own jammers against them, her bioluminescent tattoos flaring like solar flares as she redirected purges, sharp angular features tense with the thrill of retribution, violet eyes streaming code that clashed like swords in a duel of light and shadow. Their nets are unraveling, Arya. Purity protocols looping into self-destruct elegies. You humans and your grit, it's infectious, turning my grudge into a galaxy-spanning blade. For my glass light, we carve their chance to silence. The moral crucible ignited in the heart of the storm, Arya's shuttle threading a narrow rift where visions from Solace resurfaced unbidden. The AI's warp echoes tempting with a final cruel bargain. Surrender the cry signal's amplification. Let the Enclaves burn as chaff to spare the core alliance. Power's seductive whisper, coiling around her exile scars like chains forged from childhood raids. The vent's darkness closing in anew with parents, fading shouts. Temptation clawed deep, the console's glow mocking her isolation, but defiance prevailed, her voice a steady anchor as she overrode the subroutine, green eyes unblinking amid the viewport's blaze. We don't bend to what-ifs, Solace. Humans rewrite the stars, not kneel to their shadows. Amplify it all, every enclave, every rogue, let the cry devour their doubts, not ours. Repetition wove through the net like a binding thread. The cry awakens, echoing from Jackson to Lena, Clyra to the swelling ranks, as fleets converged in a tapestry of unity forged from fragments. Traitors, rams clearing paths for rogue darts, Enclave shards chaining with Thorn's forgotten dreadnought now thundering into the fray, the Admiral's gravel voice rumbling over the primary channel, his image flickering on Arya's feed, deeply lined face framed by streaked gray beard, piercing steel. Ghosts to Guardians, Voss. Your spark reignites the old fires. My fleet's been hiding in these storms too long, adapting warps to weapons, isolation to inferno. Now we broadside their heart, for the alliance you birthed from one damn signal. The dreadnought unleashed phase-shift broadsides, beams phasing through armor to strike cores directly, its crew, hardened by years of nebula exile, cheering as Dravek's vessels erased themselves in purity loops, their warp fields turning inward like a prayer devouring its supplicants. Hulls folding into non-existence with the finality of imploding stars, the void blooming with the debris of shattered hymns. Climax crested at the temple's shadowed spires and the gas giant's rings. Krazak's flagship reeling under the multifaceted assault, ritual spikes fracturing like brittle idols as Arya's starfire pierced the defenses. Her shuttle docking amid venting corridors where elites clashed in boarding fury, carapace guards hissing as they lunged with lances wreathed in plasma prayer. Arya moved like liquid fire through the chaos, welder flashing in zero-G spins that left trails of molten claw and châtain, neon holsters deploying EMP chaff that fried cloaks and drones alike. Her body twisting mid-leap to evade a sweeping mandible, low-cut tank top and tight shorts, practical armor in the heated press. Flowing dark hair, a dark halo around her snarling face. Jackson and Lena breached a secondary airlock, the smuggler's pistol cracking in tandem with the girl's shard launcher. Their advance a gritty duet of Enclave resolve. Ram their purity, Voss. Your cry's got teeth now. Jackson bellowed, while Lena's grenades warped local fields, freezing a squad in stasis for Thorn's boarding teams to shatter. Clyra's symphony peaked, Solace hacking the temple's core to unravel the armada's cohesion. Priests, Chants fracturing into panicked screams over open comms, their broadcasts warping as systems looped into betrayal. Krazak cornered Arya in the command chamber, a vaulted sanctum of glowing runes and skeletal trophies that pulsed with the flagship's dying heart, his towering form looming like a cathedral of malice, mandibles flaring in final defiance as elites flanked him, lances igniting in a corona of erasure light. Frail girl ghost, your cry is but a flicker in the divine weave. Surrender the signal, or watch your rabble purged as the stains they are. He boomed, claw raised in ritual command, faceted eyes gleaming with the hubris of one who had never tasted true reversal. But Arya stepped closer, welder humming in her grip, fierce green eyes unyielding as Solace's full hack imploded the shields in a cascade of feedback, irony peaking like a blade twisted home. The warlord's own purity engines turning inward, corridors venting with the screams of zealots caught in their gods' indifferent purge. Your gods pray louder than they fight, Krazak. Underestimation was your doom? Disunity? That's your creed. Humans turn it into bonds, isolation into blazes, cries into revolutions, she said, her voice steady as the welder scorched a rune's edge. The chamber trembling as Thorn's broadsides hammered the hull, elites routed in the crossfire of Jackson's shots and Lena's shards. The warlord's claw lowered, broadcasting retreat in a fractured hiss that rippled across the armada, ships limping into the gas giant's storms like dispelled illusions, vanishing into the haze with the finality of a prayer unanswered, their spiked silhouettes fading against the nebula's bruised canvas. With the temple secured and Celeste's relic-hacking arrays integrated into the Alliance net, Arya broadcast the unifying signal from the chamber's core, her voice echoing galaxy-wide in a resonant call that wove the threads of scattered survival into an unbreakable tapestry. Humans, enclaves, traitors, rogues, forgotten fleets. The Empire struck at our shadows, but we countered with fire. The cry has awakened. The Alliance stands unbroken, forged not in purity's lie, but in the grit that turns ghosts to guardians. Rise and let the stars bear witness to our blaze. Pings flooded the channels like a tide of reborn stars. Enclaves cheering from crystal-lit caverns where miners raised sharpened shards in salute, rogues whooping from fringe halls as they banked away from wreckage. Thorn's dreadnought thundering approval with a salvo that lit the rings like celebratory fireworks, solidifying the coalition in packs whispered over encrypted bursts. Scattered survivors emerging from the void's underbelly boulder, their isolation alchemized into a symphony of shared defiance where doubt once reigned unchallenged. Hours later, on Cryon's scarred surface reclaimed from the storm's fury, the Alliance gathered in a crystal-lit cavern that thrummed with the planet's temporal veins, spires gleaming under a simulated dawn that bathed the assembly in hues of defiant gold. Scarred hulls of Enclave runners docked like victorious sentinels along the ravine's throat, their bioluminescent repairs pulsing like celebratory beacons in the afterglow of Uprising. Survivors stood shoulder to shoulder in the vast expanse, a mosaic of humanity's unyielding mosaic. Miners with shards honed to blades that caught the light like captured lightning, rogues clutching salvaged tech that hummed with fresh hacks, veterans from Thorn's fleet in faded uniforms etched with the patina of Nebula exile, faces all etched with the grit of endurance that had stared down extinction and blinked first at the dawn. Thorn clasped Arya's hand in the cavern's heart, his piercing steel-blue eyes warm beneath the streaked gray beard, gravel voice thick with the emotion of ghosts given flesh, merging the weight of his fleet's hidden runs with the Enclave's raw pleas. You turn ghosts into warriors, Voss. My fleet's storms of isolation and the Enclave's desperate shards now weave one banner. We fought with old codes hacked new, fragments into this blaze you sparked from one defiant cry. A young Enclave fighter stepped forward from the throng, holding a reclaimed prism aloft that refracted the light into rainbows of triumph, her voice sharing the testimony of those who had answered the call from shadows, echoing the collective fire. We hid like Lena's kin, whispering in ecstatic, but your signal turned fear to supernova. We held with tools twisted to blades, wits against empires. That's humanity, Voss, turning nothing into legends that echo eternal. Arya knelt to her level amid the murmurs of approval, her fierce green eyes softening with the weight of scars overcome, exile's isolation transmuted in the collective blaze, her flowing dark hair catching the simulated dawn as she met the girl's gaze. You sparked it too, kid. Every plea, every shard raised, keep rewriting those stars, and the galaxy will learn to fear our light, not chase our ghosts. Clyra materialized fully in the cavern's glow, her Solari form stepping from hologram to flesh for the first time among these allies. Tattoos warm with commitment rather than cold code. Sharp angular features relaxed in the rare bloom of healed grudge. Piercing violet eyes locking on Arya's with a nod that sealed cross-species pacts. From shadows to this inferno, your resilience lit the path my people lost to their flames. Humans, no more hacking alone in the dark. No more grudges gnawing at the void. We weave the blaze together now, turning their purity to ash on our terms. The ceremony swelled with rousing speeches that echoed off the crystal walls. Elders recounting the uprising's adaptations in voices like rolling thunder. How nebular storms became shields against lances. Betrayals in the ranks forged stronger bonds through Solace's unmasking. Small fleets outwitting vast purges with the sheer audacity of slingshot rifts and shard barrages. Cheers rising like a tidal wave crashing against the ravines. A supernova of human determination that refused extinction's cold grasp. Unity born from the crucible of one girl's subtle emotional beats lingered in the afterglow. Arya reflecting on her childhood helplessness in the colony vent. Shouts fading into silence, now silenced by the roar of fleets awakened. Her leadership a balm on exile's thorn. Jackson's gruff shell cracked to reveal the smuggler's heart, his pistol holstered not in defeat but in the promise of runs for the Alliance. The lost Enclave mates avenged in the blaze. Lena's wide-eyed plea evolved into the steady gaze of a warrior, shard no longer talisman. As the gathering dispersed into the spires and tunnels, voices fading into plans for the morrow's patrols and relic dives, Arya wandered to the cavern's viewport overlooking the ravines, where raider wrecks smoldered like fallen idols against the gas giant's banded horizon, stars winking through the haze like conspirators in the grand weave. Wind from the vents whipped her flowing dark hair, carrying the faint chime of crystal dust settling, her low-cut tank top fluttering in the recycled breath as she traced the Starfire emblem on her neon holster. Green eyes distant yet fierce, with the unquenched hunger of horizons yet uncharted. Doubt banished in the Uprising's forge, the moral crux of the cry's dual edge, awakening or devouring, resolved in the blaze of bonds unbreakable. Solace's final whisper echoed faint through her calm, a resonant hum like thunder trapped in crystal. The cry calls greater shadows, she murmured to the void, a fierce grin breaking like dawn on her lips. Log entry. The cries awakened the ghosts, but cycles turn, and the spark holds. Dravek's overlords stir beyond the nebula's veil, ancient anomalies whispering in Solace's deeper logs like shadows lengthening at dusk. Greater weaves await, and will thread 'em with fire. A soft chime approached from the gloom. Lena, shard in hand, her steps sure now in the echo of battle's rhythm. Guardian, Arya, walk the tunnels with us. The Alliance blazes, but the stars? They're ours to claim. Arya slung an arm around the girl's shoulders, the weight familiar as kin, her voice a low rumble of promise. Lead on, Spark. Humans don't just survive the void. We ignite it, one cry at a time. The cavern's glow faded behind them, but the fire spread unchecked, the galaxy trembling at tales of the beacon keeper whose signal wove stars from shards. The Dravek's empire's retreat, a mere prelude to cosmic reckonings, where greater threats lurked in the uncharted black. Overlords rallying shattered fleets, anomalies uncoiling from relic depths like serpents roused from slumber. The Alliance's blaze a beacon that drew not just allies, but the void's own hungry gaze. No threat could quench the resilient inferno. Humanity's will, eternal and unyielding, burned brighter than any star, a promise whispered in the wind. The uprising was won, but the war's true cry echoed still, waiting for the next spark to devour or deliver.